will you be editing this?
Straightforward. I just go straight with it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And it's you. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Here we go. Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, WomenOnTV.tv, and iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. And today we have Yi Chen, and this is fun because I loved your movie. Your movie was really, really good. I had no idea about this. Talk about how you made this film and how it came together, because that wasn't easy.
Yeah, so I started the project. Well, first of all, thank you, Brian. I'm so glad. I'm so happy to hear that you like the film. So I started in 2017, and I spent 2 years in production. So I filmed all the way through the end of 2018 with 4 of the main characters. So yeah, I started the project after the 2016 election. So just a little bit about myself. I came to the US in 2003, and I became a citizen last year. And actually 2020 is my first time voting. So at the time when I started the project in 2016, 2017, I was interested in exploring Asian American voters' growing participation in the democratic process from both sides, particularly first-time voters in battleground states. One is because I'm becoming a first voter myself, and I never voted before, and democracy and being part of the democratic process, that's really new to me. So I really wanted to find out more from voters in my own community. And secondly, I was doing research, and in 2016, 1/3 of Asian American voters were first-time voters. So that was really interesting that there were this unprecedented passion from first-time Chinese American voters in 2016. So the film is really my personal journey before my first vote, to meet voters in my own community and tell their stories, and also to show the power and diversity of Asian American votes.
Well, I love this film. It was great to see that, because I've always said, why aren't we seeing what's going on more behind the scenes? One, for Asian Americans. 2, they've always been, we like to keep more close to our own community and stuff like that. So you kind of in this doorway a little bit. I thought that was really great because, I've always loved Asian culture. I go back to Jackie Chan. I go back to Bruce Lee and Jet Li. When they first came to the US, I was there to help open the door for them on the movie side of things and entertainment in Hollywood. And I still look up to them. Think of Donnie Yen. So I've always been that way when it came to the martial art world. So I've always identified with Asian culture. So for even when we were at the Hollywood Film Festival in 2015, we had the Chinese come over, and we did the first Chinese film festival with Asian culture for Hollywood. And so I had James and Julia Wu from the Shanghai Film Festival come over, and it was an honor to see that happen. And and I'm still working with them here and there on things, but I love to help people who have with a great documentary like what you've done. I think it's really good. You need to be exposed more, and congratulations to you on voting for the first time. So I get a chance to ask you a question now. What is that like, and what state are you in?
Well, so I'm a registered voter in Washington, D.C., but right now I'm in California, Northern California. So I requested my absentee ballot in September. I haven't received it yet, so I was getting really anxious last week, and I called Board of Elections, and so they told me that the ballot was mailed out. So I should be getting it this week. Fingers crossed. I know it's only it's next week, right? So yeah, it's getting really close. I am having my fingers crossed that I'll get the absentee.
What you were just talking about, I just got mine like yesterday too. And I'm in another state right now. So it's like, where is it? What's going on? Because we've never gone through this before. This is normal.
Yeah.
These issues. So again, this is what makes your film timely, because you get a chance to see someone out of all places in North Carolina. You're not thinking of a big, huge Asian community there. So it was good that you opened that spotlight on it. And then why did you choose North Carolina? How did that happen?
Well, I was really looking for characters in battleground states. That was where I want to focus on. Part of the reason, well, I would say one of the reasons is that I have lived in DC since 2005, so 15 years. And oh, by the way, I was born and grew up in Shanghai, so I heard you mention Shanghai Film Festival. Yeah, so I really wanted to get out of that blue bubble to understand voters outside these big metropolitan cities like East Coast and West Coast. So I had never been to North Carolina and Ohio before I made this film. So, and the other reason is I really wanted the film to have impact, because battleground states is where your vote really matters. So, I thought about after the film is released and the impact campaign I want to do. I really want to, and that's what we're doing now. We're working with civic engagement organizations particularly in battleground states, to mobilize Asian American voters. And also, Asian Americans are the fastest growing segment of eligible voters in the United States, and more than 11 million will be able to vote this year. And wow. we are those swing vote in key swing districts. So, right. So yeah. So so those are the main reasons that I wanted to focus the film in battleground states. So it just so happens that I found Kaiser because he wrote an article why so many first generation immigrant Chinese voted for Trump. So he actually wrote an article, and I read it, and that was exactly what I was interested in finding out at the time. So I contacted him, and he lives in North Carolina. And in 2016, he was born and grew up in the United States, but he lived in Beijing for 20 years, and he moved back to the United States in 2016. And he's actually not from North Carolina. He specifically wanted to move to a battleground state because he wanted his vote to matter, to make a difference in 2016. So I thought that was also really interesting. And in the article, he also wrote about how the divide that, because of the 2016 election, the divide among the Chinese American community on both sides, it was very polarizing, and it really affected him on a very personal level, as you saw in the film, that his wife, she's a new immigrant in 2016, and she had friends in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but they're mostly Trump supporters. After they read Kaiser's article, they found out that he's a Democrat. So they stopped talking to her. So it really affects his family on a very personal level.
That's interesting because, again, Movie Reviews and More has its own rating system. It's called the 4 E's. Your film is exciting to watch. It's engaging, it's entertaining, and it's emotion. So you get the 4 E's yet. And that's a good rating, because out of all places, like I said, you picked North Carolina. You picked a swing state, and just talking about the Asian community, we've never seen that before. And that's really, really, really good. And I kept thinking, with that fast number growing like that, are they all going to vote Republican? Because they explain why they liked Donald Trump at that point, coming from China. And I found that fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, the film has 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, so it makes it feel like they're about 50-50, but actually the data in 2016 specifically for Chinese American voters is 35% of Chinese American voters voted for Trump in 2016. So they're 1/3. They're not majority, but that data doesn't really break down to tell you which percentage of that 35% are actually first-generation immigrants. So that data, unfortunately, is not there, which I would be really curious to know if that's actually a majority first-generation immigrants.
But that's also a thing of concern, because it's what you don't know that could do that. It's like that hidden number that you do need to pay attention to. I've always been talking about that. They were saying maybe it was like 3%. It's higher than that, as you know. And I want to know because I'm like, where are they voting? So I get a chance to ask you this. How do you think from 2016, most Asian community voters now, would they still be voting for Trump or they see him indifferently now?
It's probably both. I mean, I've read articles of certain Trump supporters, Chinese American Trump supporters, change their mind. I've read articles about that, interview articles that featuring people that changed their mind. But we actually did a panel discussion with all four of the characters. So it's actually the only time, the first time, the only time we did a panel discussion with all four of them. And this question actually came up. So for Lance and Sue, they haven't changed their mind. They're still voting for Trump.
Really?
Yes. And the recording of, so if viewers go to firstvotefilm.com, under screenings, look for the screening at University of Colorado Boulder, and there is a link to watch the recorded panel that we did last week.
Wow, that's interesting. Talk about, was it easy to get access to most people? Because I love how you were able to go behind the scenes and go into a couple of things, especially when Mike Pence was there. And that makes it interesting because, again, we've never seen that from the Asian point of view. And I found that fascinating.
Yeah, it wasn't, it took a long time. So I started the development process in January or February 2017. And it took me 6 months to find these characters. I interviewed a lot, particularly on the right side, on the Republican supporters. I interviewed a lot of them, and they weren't willing to participate in the documentary. Particularly, this one is not just, okay, I have you sit down and interview and talk to you for like an hour. I would have to, I would follow them for 2 years, and I wanted a lot of, I wanted access to as much as I could, right? So, yeah, so it took me a long time to find Lance and Sue. And actually Kaiser, like I mentioned that I read his article and I contacted him. And so he, I talked to him on the phone and he agreed immediately because that was something that he was interested in too, right? So, yeah, so I actually started production with these 3 characters in 2017. I started in May or June filming with them, and it wasn't until the beginning of 2018 that I met Jennifer. So at the time, I got some fundings for the production, and one of the funders, the Center for Asian American Media, they organized a convening Asian American storytellers in the South in Durham, North Carolina. So I went there. I showed a 10-15 minute of work sample used based on the footage I shot back then. And Jennifer was there. She gave a talk on Asian American identity in the South. So that immediately resonated with me because, Jennifer and Kaiser already had 2 characters in North Carolina, Sue Guj and Kaiser Guo. So, and I was actually interested in exploring this theme of identity in the film, which, the film really evolved into more than what I initially thought it would be. So her talk really resonated with me. And so, yeah, so I asked her, what classes do you teach at UNC Chapel Hill? Can I film your classes? And in order to film our classes, I had to get permission from UNC Chapel Hill. So that took some time. And yeah, the scene with Pence, I actually couldn't get, I applied for media credential with the Ohio GOP communications person. And he denied my application. He said I'm not media. I kept telling him.
I've been through that before. That's like, really?
Yeah, he said, you're not a media. You're not, I said I'm an independent documentary filmmaker, but, he kept saying I'm not media, so I can't give you media credential. So anyway, I was on the phone with him for a long time. And basically what it means is that I couldn't take my professional camera in there.
Right.
And yeah, so I just kept, I didn't give up. So eventually he said, okay, fine, you can bring just like a small consumer camera, and if Secret Service let you in, then that's fine, but you can't be in the media pen, and you can bring a big camera. So that's what I did. Actually, it was the day before I was flying to Ohio. So I went to Best Buy. I got like a small Sony, like a consumer camera, and I brought it with me. The sound is really not that great on consumer cameras. That was and so yeah. So I just bought a small camera and followed. It was really strange. I was following Lance everywhere, filming him. So yeah, so that's what I did.
You made it work. I thought it was really good on your part, because it's not easy to get the access to that, and you can only go certain places or capture certain things. But you did a really good job, because it's not easy. People don't understand. It takes weeks, months. Sometimes you get denied, and then maybe you catch a day and they say yes. It's all hypothetically, So congratulations on that, because I know what that's like. And I always knew this, what you talked about being denied. I was always the small outlet. Now, no one beats our numbers around the world. We have 6.2 million views a day and counting. No one's beating what we're doing here in the US. I haven't been able to find anybody, and I can't count China because you have a bigger population in China, but I'm still that small person who's never been aligned to a big, huge outlet, because I saw how things were going to change. And I never wanted to be, because as you found out, you can get more stuff done being that small person sometimes, but they may look down at you because they expect you to be bigger, and bigger is not always better, because you got it done. And it's a great film.
Thank you. It's amazing what you're doing. Yeah, and actually, if I had got a media credential, what he told me is that they have like a media pen, basically a platform, and they're not allowed to leave
you wouldn't
media.
have been able to roam.
Right. So I wouldn't have been able to follow Lance and get all that footage. So it worked out in a way. Yeah.
So when did you finish this film? And then were you able to submit it to film festivals? How did that go for you?
Yeah, so I edited for a year in 2019, and I did work with a composer in actually this year, February. I worked with a composer early this year, and I was actually going to and he's a wonderful composer. He actually did the composing. He composed for Knock Down the House. And I saw that documentary. I really loved what he did for the film. So yeah. So anyway, so he was available. So I was thrilled that he was able to compose the track for the film. Yeah. So and then after that, I was actually initially going to travel to New York to do sound and color. And that was all set up for late March. And you know what happened? So yeah, so New York closed down because of the pandemic, and I couldn't travel. I couldn't travel there. So yeah, so everything was remote. They figured out the technology, and we did everything remotely. It's not the same as being in a sound studio or a professional color suite, but yeah, so I did that remotely and finished the film in April. And festival was the other
year, 2020.
April this year, yeah. So,
I was wondering what filmmakers were going through during the pandemic trying to finish their films. You're
yeah.
me what I exactly wanted to know, because that's what I was thinking of. I'm like, how are they finishing films? How are they doing this?
we had basically we used Zoom for sound. They had like 3 cameras, a camera on me, a camera on the sound mixer, a camera on the screen, and I would listen to what he did. But it's not the same. It's computer audio. It's not the same. You don't hear a lot of the things. So anyway, we went back and forth. So yeah, so anyway, so festival was the other thing that was very uncertain. I got into a few festivals and they emailed me and they said that they were not sure what they were going to do, if they were going to cancel, or if they were going to go virtual. But eventually all of them decided to go virtual. So the film premiered at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival.
Oh yeah, I love that festival. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great festival. And CamFest in May, and then AFI Docs in June. And there were
Oh, you got into AFI too?
Right, it got into
good for
AFI
you.
Docs. It also got into Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival. And in November it's gonna show at the Hawaii International Film Festival. And it also got into Vancouver Asian Film Festival.
Okay.
They want to show it the day before the election in British Columbia. So
That's
yeah.
interesting. I have a co-host, one of my co-hosts, who's really well known. She's out of British Columbia and Vancouver and Calgary. So we do a lot of Zoom interviews because she's stuck in Canada. She can't come into the US there. So she's been on a lot of my Zoom stuff since May.
Oh.
I'd love to show this to her because
Yeah.
she comes from the lumber country, but she happens to be a Maxim model.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
So, like I said, I can't stop talking about this film. It's a great film, and I want to tell my friend from the Beloit International Film Festival, Greg Girard, he's the executive director there. He would love to have this film, I'm sure, because ended up picking a lot of films going into Hollywood Film Festival for things. But Beloit is the mini Sundance in Wisconsin. So, Wisconsin is one of those states that they're like looking at, which is interesting,
Oh, no way. I actually went to UW-Madison.
Oh, I love Madison.
Yeah.
You went there for school?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love Madison.
Yeah, so
I
Madison,
went there.
It's 45 minutes from Beloit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him to watch this film.
Yes. Well, thank you. So, what is like your favorite thing about the film? What is it about the
Because
film that
you get a chance to see a whole different perspective that's never been shown before. Asian voters. It's never been seen before. I've never had a chance to see it from anybody. I've never heard of that, but I always wondered about it. And I find it fascinating because then you get into the first vote. I'm excited that you're able to vote for the first time. I'm not excited that you have to go through all these problems. We've never had this issue in the past before. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what you were talking about when you have someone talking about what it's like to come from China and not having the idea of being able to vote, almost like that. And then when you can't go across country because we're being shut down, I felt I was imagining what kind of prejudice that you might have had, being behind the camera or anything that Jennifer might have had. I don't know. I was always looking at it from that aspect of things. So I found that kind of interesting at that point, because is there a real huge Asian population that votes Republican? I wouldn't be surprised, but we've never seen it before. So I think you're probably the first to start to showcase it, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I actually there's AAPI data. They did a 2020 voter survey. So they usually do a pre-election survey and then they do an exit poll survey. So yeah, I would really be interested in knowing what happens in 2020 when they do the exit poll survey.
Exactly. So everything was finished by what? By like mid-April, was that right?
Yeah, yeah, around that time. Yeah.
So have they seen it in North Carolina? A couple of the participants, and if they have, what are their thoughts?
Yeah, they've all seen it. And like I like to be behind the camera because I'm so self-aware of seeing myself on camera, and so I'm
You
just
look good.
thank you. I'm always being, and it's not easy being in the film and having the camera follow you all the time, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, so I was really happy to not hear them say, "Oh, I don't like this shot of me. I don't like me in this shot." Like they said none of that. So that's great. And yeah, they all really liked the film, and they were actually able to hear the other side perspective through the film. Otherwise, it's just really hard for two sides to talk to each other, because and actually that came out at the panel discussion, when they were all together and expressing their political views. They're just so different, and it's really hard for them to even understand each other. So, but I think through the film they were actually able to at least see it from the other side's perspective, even though they don't agree with each other.
How was that to do the virtual panel with everybody? How many people were on that? How did that go?
You mean the one that we did with the four characters?
Yeah.
Or how many people showed up? I think we had about 50 attendees. It was actually like an hour before the last debate. So yeah, we had more than 100 people sign up. But
That's
the
still that's
recording,
still really good.
yeah, so they made the recording available for people who couldn't make it because it was right before the debate. Yeah, so it went actually. I was a little bit nervous, to be honest. It was their first time together. I had no idea how it would go. But yeah, the organizer did a really good job, and everything went really smoothly. And the moderator really had really great questions for everyone. And they had ground rules, and so everyone behaved and did their job. Yeah, it was. I think it went very smoothly.
How would you describe this film for people who haven't seen it yet?
How would I describe the film? Brian, I'm curious how you would describe the film.
I would describe it. It's a firsthand look of what it's like to be Asian American coming from China and participating in your first vote in a swing state. That's interesting. That's not normal, and we've never seen it before. And the fact that I love how you created everything and getting access, because I knew it wasn't easy to do that. Um, like I said, you get the 4 E's. You get a grade A rating from us on that. That's really really good for you, and congratulations.
Thank you. So what I want to get a quote from you, Ryan.
You
your
can you
your
can
four
have it
E's.
because
I
you
love
deserve
that.
it. You deserve it. And like I said, I want to give it to my friend Greg from Lloyd International Film Festival, who knew that you were 45 minutes away at Madison. So because
What?
theirs is in February, so they may be able to do it, and I'm working on helping them if we do it in person, if not virtually or half and half.
Yeah, I would definitely love to do that. One of the our target audience is definitely in Midwest and in the South, in battleground states. So that would be a perfect place. I would love to show the film there.
Oh no, and like I said, I can't stop talking about it. It's an excellent film. Very, very, very good. What's your social media links?
Yeah, so the film's website is firstvotefilm.com, and social media is the same, First Vote Film. And my personal social media is C35 Films. But you can actually find me if you go to First Vote Film. Yeah, and I hope that your viewers will watch the film. It's streaming right now for free on America Reframed, and it's also actually it just opened today at AFI Silver Theater Virtual Cinema, so you can also watch it that way to support a local nonprofit theater.
That's really good. That's important. How do you see theaters going in China now? And I have my thoughts on what's happening with theaters here in the US. How do you see what's going on in China for theatrical releases? How do you see that going, say, between now and right up until maybe March of 2021?
So you're asking me the theatrical release for this film in China or in general?
Will it have one? And then how do you see just the theater going audience in China right now? How do you see that going?
Interestingly enough, I recently got a reporter. She's interested in from Phoenix Media. She's interested in interviewing the characters in the film. She reached out to me, but I didn't hear back from her for a few weeks. And actually, a few days ago, I just heard back from her, and she said that she heard from the censorship that they can't do stories about American election related documentaries. So
They can or can't?
They cannot.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it sounds like the film probably won't pass the censorship, which I actually suspected that too. That was actually what I thought might be the case, because the film is about immigrants from China becoming American citizens and voting for the first time, and it's about democracy and participating in the democratic process. So I'm not sure if Chinese government really want people to see Chinese Americans actually voting.
Leaving China and going to the U.S. to vote for the first time.
Right. And both Lance and Sue said that they are Americans, right? So yeah, and the whole story about Sue, her grandfather was in the Nationalist Party, and during the Civil War, he was executed by the Communist Party, which is the party in power right now. And so, yeah, I'm not sure if the Chinese government would like that.
So how do you see just the theatrical releases in China? Are a lot of people in China starting to go back of what you've been hearing from maybe friends? How is that going?
I actually don't know how is theatrical doing in China. I know that they are pretty much back to normal and the theaters are actually open.
Yeah.
I actually really am not following that. So I don't know actually.
So when it comes to this, I like the platforms that you've chosen, because any way you can get films out there and people to see, it's still a benefit here in the US now, because our theaters are having problems going back, obviously. And I'm not surprised at that, because I saw that coming. But in general, thank goodness for you that more people will be able to see it in different ways. That's got to be a good feeling as a director, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually the most rewarding part. The whole process making this film, the distribution, actually is the most rewarding. Getting the film out since May, so we've done more than 10 film festivals, all virtual, of course, and the film. Well, more than 20 organizations have hosted community and university screenings. So the film is distributed by Good Docs for educational distribution. So community and university screenings, we've done more than 20 of those. And the film aired on World Channel America Reframed last week. So World Channel covers 70% of US TV household. So that was great. And then right now it's streaming on America Reframed website until November 19th. And it also just opened in virtual cinema at AFI Silver, and we also did virtual cinema at actually in North Carolina and Ohio at the Carolina Theater in North Carolina, and the Nightlight Cinema in Ohio actually in October. And it's also playing at the Hawaii International Film Festival and Vancouver Asian Film Festival. So all of that information is on the website, firstvotefilm.com. And yeah, and I would love the film or audience in China see this film. They can still watch it if they use VPN. They can still watch the film that way. Yeah, it's been really rewarding to have the film out and connect with audience.
And was this your first film?
It's my first feature length.
You would never know that it was your first film. It's that good.
Brian, you're so kind.
I don't say it to be kind. I say it to be because it's true. It really is a great film. And it's like, I don't want to read the notes until at the end. In this case, I didn't want to read the press notes because I'm going by based on what I saw in the film. So that's why I had to ask.
Wait, what did you have to ask?
I won't read the press notes because I like to go by give and take in an interview of what your qualifications are and then what it's like to make that film. I like because I didn't even have to read the notes. That's why I asked. I'm like, she can't be a first-time filmmaker, and I didn't even want to look because it was that good.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Brian. That means a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Did you ever expect to get this much accolades and to get it into film festivals? Because it's not easy, for one. There's so many good films that just don't make the cut, and people don't realize how or why.
Well, there are actually a lot of festivals that I submitted to that I didn't get into. But I really love AFI Docs, and the film got into almost all the Asian American film festivals, which is great because that's core audiences. I really want Asian American audience to see it. And I love AFI Docs. Being someone from DC, it's I'm maybe biased, but it's one of my favorite documentary film festivals. And Hot Springs it's my first time actually going to Hot Springs, which is virtual this year. But yeah, it's also really a really great. They had a really great lineup this year. It's a really great festival. So it's all been really great. The festivals, I think the film really resonates with audience. One is, like you said, they haven't really seen a film about Asian American voters before. That's something new, particularly from both sides. And I think the other, and it's the election year, that this is a film about voting. And also everything else that's going on, the uprising. The film also talks about identity and race and racism in the U.S. So I think it resonates and talk about belonging and identity. So I think it resonates with audience in many different ways.
Well, let me ask you about that. When everything was going on, we've never had this before like this. This is the first time ever. What were you seeing as that director? What were you seeing as that Asian, female Asian American now? How are you seeing that through your eyes? What was the first thing that was going through your mind?
How am I seeing?
How did you see the protests and everything like that?
How do I see the protest? We have, as you saw in the film, right? There's Silent Sam in 2018 that it was toppled, and I was in North Carolina and filmed. It was controversial, right? And actually the protest that toppled the Silent Sam, they actually had to go through a trial, and some of them were arrested. there's a long way to go. There's just a lot of work that we still need to do. Yeah, it's hard for me to, I have really like, it's so complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. We got a couple minutes. So give your social media links again, and then where people can click on to come see the film.
Yeah, so follow us on social media, First Vote Film, and it's streaming now at if you go to World, I think it's world.org. So search for World Channel, America Reframed, and this film is streaming on America Reframed, and it's also showing in virtual cinema at AFI Silver. But if you go to our website, firstvotefilm.com, all the screening information is on the website.
And so what do you got coming up next? What are you working on now? Anything yet?
Distribution has really been a full-time job this year. So I'm still working on that, getting the film out, and doing a lot of panels and working on the impact campaign. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on now, and I have a couple ideas in development, but nothing really. I'm still working on that. So
you're gonna come up with something good. I can see it. You're creative, and you can come back to Movie Reviews and More anytime and just talk about films anytime you want to.
I would love to. It's a pleasure talking to you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you for making a great film and opening up the eyes, because a lot of people need to see stuff like this, and that's a good thing, you know? So,
yes, thank you.
I want to thank you. So in Mandarin, you get a chance to sign off in Mandarin of who you are, your film, and where it's showing. Go ahead.
Oh my God, my Mandarin is a little out of practice right now. Wait, so what do I say?
You can say it, and you can say it to people who may be seeing this show in Mandarin of your film, who you are, and where it's showing. How's that?
You have viewers in China. That's amazing. Or Chinese viewers in the US.
Hey, you never know, right?
That's great. So actually, America Reframe is working on Chinese subtitles for the film. So so more people can watch it. OK， 大家好，我是陈怡，谢谢你们观看。你可以看这部影片到我们的网站firstvotefilm.com。
谢谢。Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. So,
all right.
Yi Chen for this, and obviously the film is called firstvotefilm.com and First Vote and vote. So we're getting to that point. So this is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, WomenOnTV.tv, and iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. And if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours, because the world needs it. Oh, and don't forget to vote. We will see you next week.